You put a 2-year-old child in a crib with a bunny rabbit and an apple? Let me know when the child eats the bunny rabbit and plays with the apple.
Welcome to the Cannabis Vegan. I'm Jason Lawton. On today's show, we're really going to be diving a bit deeper into the 2016 Cannabis Health Summit. We'll be hearing a bit from Alison with Cannabis for Pets as we dive deeper into the pet endocannabinoids. This and more from the Cannabis Vegan.
But I notice you have clothes on, and I notice that you have a cell phone and you have a computer. It is unfair to pick one thing that lions do that you want to mimic when you don't want to mimic anything else they do. When lions walk up and greet each other, they sniff each other's ass. When I came in this room, you did not kneel down and sniff my ass.
Hi everyone, I am so excited to talk with you today about something that I feel very passionate about, and that is cannabis and pets. Now, according to statistics, over half of you in the audience today have at least one pet at home. So I'd like for you to imagine just for a moment with me that you have a dog that you've had for the past 4 years. He's a member of your family. He's your best friend. Then all of a sudden, he starts having grand mal seizures. You take him to the vet and they prescribe medication, but it doesn't work. So you go back to the vet, they prescribe something else. Again, it doesn't work. So you go back again to the vet. Is there another alternative for my animal? One that maybe doesn't have bad side effects? But unfortunately, the vet says no. The only option for your pet now is to put him down. To put him out of his misery. Is this really the only option that you have for your best friend? What if it's not? What if the same medication that Sanjay Gupta talks about on TV, helping little kids with epilepsy, what if that could help your dog too? Better yet, what if it were safer, cheaper, and more effective even than pharmaceuticals? Yes, I am talking about cannabis as an alternative for your pet. This is not a made-up story. This is a real story about a dog that we're currently treating, completely seizure-free on cannabis. But this is only one of hundreds of animals that we're currently treating. So you're probably wondering, who are we? Well, my name is Alison. I'm the founder of a company called Treatwell with my business partner, Harry. Treatwell's mission is very simple. We want to provide the very highest quality possible cannabis medicine that we can for both humans and for pets. Now, I come from a very traditional background, Wall Street, think tanks, software. I have a few master's degrees. But everything changed for me a few years ago. I used cannabis for the first time coming out of a coma from meningitis. After that, I knew I wanted to get into this industry. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to raise the bar. I wanted to provide high-quality cannabis medicine for everyone, even pets. Now, my business partner has a similar story. He was dying from an autoimmune issue. Cannabis saved his life. So he's been growing, extracting, and providing patients with medication for over 20 years now. Luckily, he's kept really good data and really good notes. So we have quite a robust database to work with protocols, as well as dosing guidance for patients. We've also been growing back our plants for certain qualities over the years that we realize have worked quite well. So when we talk about medication in the second half of this presentation, this is what we're talking about. This is where it's coming from. Now, enough about us. Let's get back to the pets. So pets have endocannabinoid systems too. In fact, they believe that all animals have endocannabinoid systems. The only ones up for debate right now are those insects. Those little buggers, they're not so sure about. But the rest of them, yes. They know they have endocannabinoid receptors. We know they make endogenous cannabinoids without their body just like humans do. However, there is one big difference with animals you need to consider. It's how they metabolize cannabis. It's very different than how we metabolize them. Now, what scientists believe is going on is that the cannabinoids from the cannabis plant are actually binding to the animal's receptors longer. They're kind of sticky, if you will. They want to resist letting go. Well, what this translates into for the animals is a louder, a longer, and a stronger response than in humans. So the natural question is cannabis safe for my pet? It's a good question. The answer is yes and no. We do know that animals cannot die necessarily from ingesting cannabis, similar to humans. However, this does not necessarily mean that it's always safe or effective for your animal either. There is something called THC intoxication. This is really real and very scary, not just for the animal, obviously, but also for the human. So what THC intoxication means essentially is that the animal has ingested too much THC and its system can't quite handle it. And since they metabolize it and it's amplified, they have more adverse effects than, say, humans would. Symptoms of this might include something like drooling. They might have lost motor control. They might vomit. They also can be very scared and very anxious. It means any kind of stimulation can really set them off. Now, in milder cases of this intoxication, usually if you put the animal in a quiet room, away from stimulus, and a giant bowl of water, usually they're just fine by the next day. However, in more serious cases, they definitely should be taken to a veterinarian where they can be monitored or perhaps treated for this intoxication. There are two very important things that I want you to consider when dosing animals. The first one is to please avoid pure THC for your animals. We really have found that it's not needed. The most amount of THC that the animals seem to need is approximately a 50-50 ratio of CBD to THC. Even for the most serious of conditions like cancer, end-of-life care, appetite stimulation, it's really all they need. If you give them pure THC, it's going to lead to the intoxication, which puts a lot of stress on the animal's body, which is not what you want for an animal with a compromised immune system or who is ill. The second thing I want you to consider is to please avoid human-dosed products for your animals. Their small body weight size, in conjunction with how they metabolize it, means you need to be very careful not just what you give them, but how much you give them. Usually the animals need a lot less than humans do. I also want to talk a little bit about the difference between hemp and cannabis. For the purpose of this presentation, I am talking about cannabis, not hemp. Now, while the lines are starting to be blurred between the two, in general, hemp is usually grown for its fiber, for its strength, yet even protein, which is great for certain things, but not necessarily what you're looking for in a medication. The cannabis side of things is different. It's actually grown for its full spectrum of terpenes, as you've heard is very important. Also subcannabinoids, and yes, even THC, which done correctly is very beneficial for the animal. So there are a variety of products on the market today, and they come in different forms. You can get something like a capsule, which you can put directly into the animal's mouth, or you can break it up and put it into their food. We're also seeing medication as dog food or cat food, as well as pet treats. There's also something called tinctures, which are a liquid form of cannabis. This personally is our preferred method of medication. So what you can do with a tincture, you can put it directly into the animal's mouth if they don't have an appetite. You can put it into their food, or you also can use it as a topical. So where would you access this kind of medication? Well, this can get complicated because for hemp, it's a little different story, pretty straightforward. Currently, you can cross state lines with hemp, so you can purchase it from the internet or even from a pet store. Where it gets tricky is with cannabis. So obviously, you can only purchase cannabis in states where cannabis is legal. So for example, we're based out of California. So if you wanted to purchase our products, you would need to have a medical marijuana card for the human and then go to a dispensary like Harborside to purchase it. Or if you're part of our collective, you could also come directly to us. But I want to make sure that everyone understands to please not be shy about talking to your veterinarian about the concept of using cannabis on your animal. Personally, we've found that a lot of vets are very open-minded about this and actually encouraging patients to try it as an alternative. We see them every week. Now, not all, I'm going to say that for sure, but a lot of them are, and even more seem to be coming to us every week. This is our preferred method. We prefer working directly with the veterinarians. We believe an open and honest relationship with your veterinarian is crucial for the health and well-being of your animal, especially if you plan on dosing your animal away from any other medication. It's very important that you're under a veterinarian's care. I also want to encourage everyone to please talk to your politicians, because a lot of them aren't even aware, you might not even be aware, that you can use cannabis very safely and effectively in animals. But the conversation starts with you. So it's the only way we're going to make change. So you're probably wondering by now, what other things are we treating animals with cannabis for? Well, here's an example of what we're treating. Now I'm going to dive into some detail in some case studies in just a second. Before I do, I need to talk about dosing. This seems to be the most question that I get asked. What dose do I give my animal? Well, it's a very good question because there's no exact answer. The dosing varies widely, just like it does in humans. But there are 3 factors that really you should consider when you're talking about dosing your animal. The first, how much does your animal weigh? For example, you would give very different dosing to a Chihuahua or a cat than you would to, say, a Golden Retriever. You also want to consider what condition you're trying to treat. For example, with anxiety, only small amounts of medicine really are needed in the smaller animals for anxiety versus larger amounts for seizures. And finally, consider what your goal of using cannabis is. For cancer, for example, if you choose palliative care, which means symptom relief, oftentimes end of life, it means a lot less than, say, if you're trying to fight the tumor or fight the cancer. But there is one universal truth that I can tell you, and that is always start small. Very slowly ramp up until you find the effective minimum dose for your animal, just like in humans. All right, now for the fun part, the case studies. Before I do, here's a disclaimer. So this was used with our medication, so you might see very different results, whatever you use, for a lot of different reasons. You're going to see a reference to a lot of ratios, 20-to-1 and 1-to-1. What that is a ratio of CBD to THC. You're also going to see a reference to something called THCA, which is non-psychoactive. It is the raw acid form of THC extracted from the plant. Start with anxiety. We see quite a few animals with anxiety, both cats and dogs. Tiger here was basically showing his anxiety by not going in the litter box anymore. And so just small amounts of 20-to-1, and we saw that fixed in about a week. So we started using the litter box again, as you can see from the photo. Very relaxed, happy cat now. And then Honey and Sylvester, they're show dogs. They're little Pomeranians. Very anxious breed. Small amounts of 20-to-1 is all they needed. Now, it doesn't change their personality, doesn't make them sedated. It just makes them a little calmer, just very happy. Arthritis is very common for us too. We see a lot of cats and dogs with us. Massimo here, absolutely gorgeous 5-year-old Sheltie, had arthritis pretty early. He used to love to run. That was his favorite thing to do. And then all of a sudden, he wasn't able to walk around the block. After small amounts of 20-to-1, well, I would say within 4 days, we saw him running along the beach. Absolutely dramatic change for Massimo. Lenny and Ernie are elder cats. The owner came to us and said, their personality has really changed. For the past 5 years, Ernie used to run up the stairs, jump on everything. He was very, very active. Then all of a sudden, the arthritis started to set in for both of these animals. And one of the things they told us was they used to love to stretch out their paws. Well, they were only able to do it so far now. Well, after just getting on 20-to-1 for small amounts, we saw changes very quickly in these animals. So now Ernie is running up the stairs, climbing on everything, as well as they're able to do full stretches where they weren't able to do that before. Hip dysplasia we're also seeing in cats and dogs, very common, especially with the alpine breeds, a lot of the sled dogs. So Kira's an example of this. She's a Malamute, and she's young, but she's been having a lot of trouble sitting, standing, and walking. We need a little bit more, 20-to-1 for these, but we find just moderate amounts have worked quite well for Kira. And as you can see from the photo, she also loves belly rubs. Molly, she is a Maine Coon. Now we're seeing quite a few Maine Coons with hip dysplasia. She was actually used to love to perch on the top of her cat tree. She's been having trouble. She hasn't been able to jump to the 2nd level in a long time. So moderate amounts according to her weight as well. But we saw a dramatic difference, and now she is perched on top. Never been happier. Seizures, like I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, you need a little bit more 20-to-1 usually for these cases. However, I do want to point out